Today we're going to rank every year of the toy line of G.I. Joe from worst to best. What I think the greatest year of G.I. Joe ever was. In this conversation, we're going to get a little nostalgic ride down the whole run of G.I. Joe in weird order. But we're also going to see sort of the rise and fall of the toy line. What is the greatest toy line of all time? And we're going to start with that fall. I'd like to hear what your opinion is. What do you think is the best year of G.I. Joe? We probably can all agree the worst year of G.I. Joe is what I'm going to tell you it is. But I want to know what you think the best year is and what's your highlight of that year. Ain't going to be too hard to figure out what the worst year was. And that's because the worst year was the last. Each year has, at least one, maybe two, maybe three figures that are sort of icons of that year. And I'm going to go with, for this, the icon of the worst year of G.I. Joe, Ice Cream Soldier. Not going to be waiting for my classified version of Ice Cream Soldier, okay? You can keep that one. He's just garishly detailed in orange, and Wildcard says something about how much he loves ice cream, and he's a flamethrower trooper. I mean, this is just trash at this point, and they start producing just stupid shit. So we're talking about, neon glow weapons, monsters, bio vipers. They've gone ninja crazy, first of all. I mean, it's like, I've always, I dug the first few ninjas in G.I. Joe. I remember, Storm Shadow be one of the greatest things I ever got. And then starting to go, ooh, maybe they should make more ninjas. Sort of like when I was 14, and I was like, maybe they should make more superhero movies. I am not. I'm like, stop. Just fucking stop. That's how it was. By this time, they're just throwing ninjas at you. They don't make any sense anymore. They got an Arctic ninja, whatever that is. What, is he only a ninja in the snow? That doesn't make any sense. Design had just gone to shit. So, 1994, the Ice Cream Soldier's home yearbook. He gets least likely to succeed in the yearbook. And this is the worst year of G.I. Joe in history. This is not going to be too surprising. We're almost going to go back order at this first chunk, because the second worst year was 1993. We have the designers just going crazy with color and just throwing these super colorful. I mean, like, if you walked into battle looking like any of these guys, you'd be shot on sight. You'd have big orange, red, glowing shit all over you, and you just be mowed down. We got some of the dumbest vehicles they've ever produced here. The Cobra detonator looks like it shoots Nerf missiles. It's got a giant plunger on the top that just does not look very good. This also brought us the Dino Hunters, because what do we need? We don't have dinosaurs. And somehow dinosaurs were brought back into present day. I imagine Mindbender probably had something to do with that. I don't know. And we got kind of even a lame-ass dinosaur. What is that shit? Like, not even a good one. That's not even one of the good dinosaurs. It's like a Z-list dinosaur. And we're fighting dinosaurs. So I don't know what's going on. They're throwing shit at the wall here. They're trying to do everything they can to revive the line. And it is getting dumber and dumber and dumber. So, horrible year. This also brings in this sort of desperate grasp of making everybody a ninja. Scarlet's a ninja now. Everybody's a ninja. I mean, Scarlet is a martial artist. She's not a ninja. She doesn't need to be a ninja. Not everybody needs to be a ninja. Okay? Michael Dudikoff. I don't really need every character to be a ninja. Zartan is a ninja. I get it. He was part of the Arashikage. We know he was a ninja. And that they gave us this look, this biker look. I don't know. It's okay. It does not the worst. Maybe one of the better figures of the year, probably, with his weird old orange mohawk. 1993 also brings with it the Mega Monsters, the Bio Viper. I mean, these things look like He-Man villains. I remember, I think some of them came with clay. I can't remember why, or slime, so it was part of the creation process. And they just don't even look like they belong in the line. Now, I'm going to admit, if I was a kid in 1993 and I was probably have some fun with them, they look like they might be pretty fun, but they wouldn't capture the imagination the way the line had for me, which it brought in that sense of this is believable, this is a real world. The world building was so incredible in the first years of G.I. Joe, first decade of G.I. Joe, that it sort of made you buy into it, right? I think that's what really good world building does. It makes you believe in it. It makes you buy in, and this just takes you right out. So 1993, the second worst year in G.I. Joe history. Well, this is Scarface, second half of the movie, where he's just like getting jealous of his friend, doing way too much cocaine. That's what's happening to G.I. Joe at this point of the line. I'm getting real predictable here, but I won't stay predictable. 1992. Third worst year in G.I. Joe history, and many of you had probably checked out by now. It was pretty bad, but actually has some really good and fun things in it, kind of things I love. So there's still a lot to love here. 1. Drug Enforcement Agency, G.I. Joes and their drug dealer counterparts, Headman and the Headhunters. I love this. They came out with drug dealer action figures. Amazing. Weird, nobody would do that now. Hey kids, for kids, let's play with some drug dealers. Yeah, I just thought that was bizarre and cool. I love the character Headman. He's just dressed like a pimp. He's all scummy looking, and it was kind of fun. This year also gave us a lot of ninjas. I kind of like a couple of them. Slice and Dice were good looking villains. You use them as a pair, and they had some good weaponry. And this is where I wasn't minding the Ninja Force so much. Or just like it was cool to have a couple of, a little team of ninjas that Storm Shadow had joined the crew, and they had created a little strike team of ninjas. Kind of a cool concept. But when there's 300 of them and they all kind of generic and they look a little bit alike, you get tired of them. So this like over ninjafication of G.I. Joe was not all that exciting, and didn't really work for me. Again, also in that set, we did get Overkill. It was a really cool character, a sort of leader of the B.A.T.S. Do they need a leader? Can you lead them? The whole idea of the B.A.T.S. is they malfunction all the time, they light up and explode, they shoot everything that moves, including Cobra soldiers. So I don't know that you can have a leader for something like that, but he was a cool looking thing. 1992 also came with a couple of decent vehicles, just a couple. Most of them were pretty trash. But the Cobra Earthquake was something that I couldn't resist. This is at this point I had, checked out for the most part, being a little old for this, and also just not loving the design. But I did pick up the Earthquake. It's a giant bulldozer full of weapons. It was awesome and something that you hadn't seen before.
Need a lift, Duke? Thanks! Look, Cobra's got the plasma dogs!
But here comes G.I. Joe battle copters, zip strip copters that really fly high.
Perfect for dropping in unexpected!
They started rebooting characters, trying to get us back with shooting weapons. I think toy companies always think that weapon shooting is really exciting, and that if you put bells and whistles, the kids are really excited. But the reality is like, you were always kind of excited when you saw, oh wow, the weapon shoots. And then you like shoot it like 3 times and you miss. I don't need it to shoot. It's just better if I take it out and make it hit. And it's too big now and I can't use this weapon. It's so stupid. So those are never good. They never really worked very well. And so we don't need that shit. Even as a kid, I didn't need that shit. I needed to shoot. They gave us a lot of the characters we love and fucked them up bad, right? So one of the worst examples, or probably a great example of why this is one of the worst years, is that Firefly. You basically took him in name only and you made him in an all green, and he could be anybody, and he looks dumb, and you ruined essentially one of the greatest villains in the entire line. I mean, look at that guy. I thought they were stretching. It was ninja, 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 ninja every 2 seconds, and I didn't even like this, you know, new plot about Firefly is also part of the whole plan to kill Snake Eyes and was the one, you know, it just gets too convoluted. It also had these helicopters that would actually fly, still function to this day. And more importantly than that, one of them came with one of the great unsung villains in the G.I. Joe line, Cobra Interrogator. I really like this character. I like the idea of a guy who is basically a torturer, right? I think he was supposed to only torture you psychologically, but he had this like weird weapon that looked like he could blend, you know, his daiquiris with it and also electrocute you. I don't know what the point of that was, but it was cool. He was sort of intimidating and frightening, and bring him into the classified line. Conversely, against the Interrogator, we have Major Altitude. What a stupid name. That's the thing, the names are just getting dumb. And there's a couple of gems here, and a couple of the gems I'm gonna pick out of this line is Mercer. Now, we had an earlier Mercer, but he didn't look like a Cobra infantry soldier who would turn, which is like Mercer's story, right? Mercer is a Cobra Viper who's turned and now is against Cobra. And I always thought that was such a really rich story fuel. I like the look of this guy better. We also get Red Star, and there's an interesting thing here that they're bringing in more and more international soldiers, and I like this sort of like exchange program where we're bringing international soldiers, Big Ben, Red Star, into the line. And so there's some good stuff here. It's not a complete loss. Bad year, but getting better as we go back in time, right? The Crimson Guard Immortals, which some of you people love, I don't really love them. And the new version of the Bat, which is a shitty figure. Just absolutely stupid and looks like crap. And then the Echo Warriors. Again, Cesspool was an incredible character. One I'm really anticipating they'll come out with. You know, a toxic venom spewing chainsaw weapon. I mean, he just looked insane too. He looked like John Lithgow after falling in a chemical vat. He just looked kind of insane. We also get the Air Commandos, which had a couple of cool moments. We had one figure who was a Skymate. He's an Aussie, and he had a boomerang, and you know, he was like Crocodile Dundee, G.I. Joe, and I liked that building the year with these international soldiers. So there's some good stuff. Believe it or not, we're not going in order anymore, okay? I'm gonna stop. We're going back in time, 1989. We can see the design slipping. It's a little bit too in the sci-fi realm, and there's some stuff they're doing that just isn't working. But there's some real good stuff in here too. So they're still producing great shit. On the highlights of this year, we get Naugahyde joining the Dreadnoks, and I love this figure. He is, you know, comes with a boar. He's a hunter. He's strapped with weapons. He's jacked. He looks really obnoxious, and he's sort of perfect fodder for the Dreadnoks. We also get the Arctic Stalker. Came with a canoe, right, or something like that, and that was a great figure. I have a couple other favorites from this line. The Frag Viper, right? He's got this sort of lacrosse stick arm that can hurl grenades at rapid speeds, just being fed into him by a backpack. I think that weapon is incredible, and that's one figure I really want them to produce for the classified line. A lot of really good Vipers in this line. A little too colorful. The color scheme is all out of whack. Everything's so much, it's just like hurts your eyes. But in there's some good stuff. We also got the Alley Viper, which is a really iconic soldier, one of the best Vipers they've ever come up with. The idea of this strike force that sort of invades cities is really interesting. 1989 also brought us some really good vehicles, just a couple. Most of them were meh. You got the Cobra Condor, which is a great ship. It's separated into two, sort of like a bomber vibe to it, and really love that one. You know, they're still doing interesting and innovative things. It hasn't jumped the shark entirely by this year, although it's definitely gone downhill. 1990. Now, most of you maybe had checked out by now too, but actually there's a lot of good stuff in 1990 that is mixed in with a bunch of crap. I mean, we have things like Captain Gridiron, which is a totally stupid figure. I kind of liked him at the time, but he hurls, you know, football grenades. He's stupid. We get a ton of new Vipers, including one of the best Vipers of all time, the Range Vipers. Probably the scariest looking thing in G.I. Joe. Just like, these guys are terrifying. We also get the Saw Viper, who, if you read the comic, did more damage than anybody in the entire history of G.I. Joe, mowing down and killing dozen of your favorite characters in one issue after, you know, years of almost no one dying. And so he was memorable for that, despite wearing purple for some pinkish purple magenta, which is not a good decision. And this is like when the design is clearly slipping into, let's make everybody as colorful as possible, right? It's a rainbow of colors in G.I. Joe, but still they're doing some really good stuff. This is also the introduction of the Night Creepers, technologically advanced ninja. That's what the Night Creepers were. They used tech more than your average ninja, and they had a great look. This is also a great year for vehicles. So this is we had the Cobra Rage.
Cobra Rage is on the loose. It's a monster machine that's 6 guns strong.
We also had the General, which is this massive vehicle that you could land helicopters on. Along with that, we got the Retaliator, a big helicopter that had a giant claw that could pick things up. It was something fun to play with. It was ridiculous, but you know, but there's a couple of real highlights of the vehicles here that really make this year stand out, despite it is in the downward spiral part, right? This is where Scarface has just started to do too much cocaine and is beginning to, you know, his empire is beginning to fall apart. The Hammerhead was an incredible submarine that, along with the Cobra Bug, could make for really good nautical battles. I had sort of quit, right? I was off G.I. Joe. I had kicked the habit because now I had to make my own money, and you know, I shouldn't be spending it on giant toys. But every once in a while I'll be like, oh yeah, no, I didn't get that. That is cool. So I usually bought, at this point I wasn't buying everything, but I was buying the things that caught my eye, and that was one where I was like, all right, that's cool. I would have loved that. I'm snagging that thing. I still have it to this day. I have all my stuff, by the way. I never gave away a single one of them. I got everything somewhere. 1988. Now we're at peak G.I. Joe. It's still great here. That's my opinion. This is the last great year that we see of G.I. Joe, where we are creating icons. I mean, they still, like I said, we've gone over, there's still good stuff in the next few years. This is basically the last year that it really feels like they know what they're doing, and it is at its peak. This is where we get our new version of Storm Shadow. He's flipped. He's now on the side of G.I. Joe. He's one of the good guys. And one of the best Vipers ever, the Hydro Viper. The scariest looking things you've ever seen. They were genetically modified. They had those claw hands that are with webbing between their hands. They had a pretty frightening looking knife and a manta ray that would fight alongside them, I guess. I mean, why? How would you train a manta ray to fight alongside you? I don't know. They have a great look and really want one of those. I think that we will get one of those pretty soon. I'm betting, because I know the design team at Hasbro must be like drooling over making one. And at the absolute height of this year, we have the introduction of Road Pig. So this is they're still producing iconic, the greatest characters they've ever come up with. Road Pig, multiple personality character, one of the grossest of the Dreadnoks, also the biggest, most frightening of the Dreadnoks. And if you've seen my video on ranking the Dreadnoks, that's up there for most people as either their favorite or, for me, number 2. We also get a lot of Iron Grenadier stuff here. We get Voltar, General Voltar, with his vulture, and I loved having these different factions where Cobra you'd be pitting Cobra against itself, with the Iron Grenadiers and Destro fragmenting off in their segment, Cobra Commander holding on to whatever he could, and then Serpentor becoming his own thing, his own entity with a whole other separate army. And the civil war between those was something always good to imagine. And we get Night Force and Tiger Force. I don't give a shit about that stuff. I don't like repaints, okay? I don't like them when I was a kid. I don't like them now. I don't buy repaints. So you can, put tiger stripes on everything and try to sell it to me. It ain't working on me. When I was a kid, it did. Whatever. But now it don't work on me. I don't like that shit. Unless it's a great figure like that, the Outback with the Tiger Force symbol, I like that. But everything else, nope, not a fan. This is also a decent year for vehicles. We get the Cobra Bug, which is a submarine, one of the most batshit insane looking things that they ever produced. Finally have a submarine, but it's also loaded out with weapons and cannons and, miniature pieces that come off, that big bulb that the head of it would pop off and become its own sub or escape, pod. That thing was one of my all-time favorite vehicles. And along with that, we have probably the king of that line, the Rolling Thunder. Massive vehicle carrying 2 just giant missiles. I mean, what could this thing be used for other than destroying a country? And for me, I always just made the Rolling Thunder rolling along, transporting those missiles, and I'd have the Dreadnoks come over and just trash the shit out of it. But that was a great vehicle, and so this was a great year, possibly the last truly great year. The next year in line, 1987. Now this is an iconic year where they produced one icon after another. We got Chuckles in this year. Chuckles is one of those characters at the time was cool, sort of Miami Vice looking guy, but has just grown in estimation as time has moved on, especially if you read the IDW Cobra series. Chuckles is sort of the star of that. He's a pretty disturbed character. We also get Cobra Commander decked out in armor. We got Big Boa. This is the weird year. We get Raptor, right? The Cobra accountant that is obsessed with birds of prey. We get Crystal Ball, the file card written by Stephen King for his son. Just creepy, weird. We got Tunnel Rat and Jinx, and we've got Croc Master. This is a weird year, right? This is a year where they just went crazy and they threw every weird idea at the wall. A lot of it is really fun. This is also the year in which they introduced Cobra La. The G.I. Joe movie comes out. And we all, you may have mixed feelings about Cobra La. My feelings are mixed, and I love him. So I will say, they don't hit the right note for me and what I want. They're too pushing the envelope of science fiction and fantasy. But having said that, their design is so incredible that I just love them. So I'm looking forward to having the Royal Guard to troop build with. I feel like I'll be buying a dozen of those. We also get a ton of great vehicles in this line. It's amazing they packed this all into one year. The biggest of all being, of course, the Defiant. The second largest set they ever came out with in the line, and also one of the greatest things they've ever done. This is a launch pad with a space shuttle, and that was big enough you could have characters living in it for months of story, and having I think one of the best things about the Defiant was always just playing out the scenario of we got to get the Defiant launched and Cobra's going to stop us from launching it. I remember having a thing where this would always happen whenever I played with the Defiant. They would be trying to raise it up so that the Defiant could launch, right? And there'd be people fighting on the top of it. As it raises, they just sort of slide off and start to fall off. Snake Eyes would always be one of them. He'd be clawing on and hanging on with a grappling hook. And and sort of like Titanic, as everybody sort of slides off and falls to their death. So the Defiant is one of the greatest things they ever came up with, and that puts this high in the ranking. We also have a bunch of great vehicles in this line. We got the Mamba and the Cobra Maggot, the Pogo, which is one of the dumbest things they ever come up with, but man, was it fun to play with.
The Cobra Pogo.
Joe's got trouble. He's got it bad. Cobra's got a pogo and it's up and bad.
Pogo's loaded for action.
As nonsensical as it is, it was really fun. Okay, now we're getting into the great shit. This is all great from here on in. At the 5th slot, 5th best year of G.I. Joe, we're going to go with the first year, 1982. This year I'm going to put at number 5 because it certainly created so many of the iconic characters: Stalker, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Clutch, Cobra Commander, and brought the line to life. But obviously, it's early and it hasn't hit its stride yet. It hasn't figured out its weird place yet, right? It looks very much like of a military unit, which is interesting and appealing to me because they all look like one unit, but it's not as fun or exciting as when they're just a bunch of crazy looking people from all different functions of the military or non-military or whatever, with pets and weird shit. I mean, so it hasn't hit that note yet. However, in this year we do get some great vehicles: the Mobat, the Vamp, the Jump Packs. We get a lot of great looking stuff, and we introduce Snake Eyes and Scarlet and Stalker. So it's got to get some credit for being first, but it's definitely not the best year. And a better year than that, in my opinion, is 1986. 1986 is one of the most iconic years of G.I. Joe, so it gets the number 4 slot. Now this year we get a lot of the greats here. This is the year that we are introduced to the B.A.T.S. The Battle Android Troopers, one of the greatest things. What made them fun, again, is the file cards added to it. Of course, having a robot army is fantastic, but the way they treated their robot army was even more fascinating. They would just airdrop them without a parachute, and then bats would shoot at anything that moved, even a Cobra soldier. Hit them in the right way, they light on fire. They're just a nightmare. But they're cheap and they do what they're told. That made them less all-powerful too. They're not just all-powerful robots. They're robots that have a lot of flaws. It was really fun and interesting, and that's what the file cards produced, that element of play that made this such a great toy line. We also get Dr. Mindbender, the Mad Scientist, and Serpentor, his creation, who I think immediately my first reaction to Serpentor was similarly to Cobra La. It's like, he's sort of stupid. He's stupid looking. And he's annoying in the cartoon. I hate him in the cartoon. He's just, I'm not, how is this guy some sort of gray leader? He just like screams, "This I command." He yells at everybody. He's a dumbass.
This I command!
But in the comic book, Serpentor was an incredibly interesting character. He had the memories of Julius Caesar and the memories of Hannibal and the memories of Genghis Khan, and he was inspiring to soldiers. He was literally a great leader, made from the greatest leaders of all time. So he was like an incredible character, really well written by Larry Hama back in the day. So he has some potential. He always looks so ridiculous that it's hard to take him serious, but still an iconic, fun character. I loved them. We also get Xandar and Zarana, part of the Zartan family. And of course, we also get some of everybody's favorites, Beachhead and Lowlight. Beachhead and Lowlight are the top of most people's lists of favorite G.I. Joe characters. So this year came with a bunch of icons. This is also the year that introduces Sergeant Slaughter into the line.
That's Sergeant Slaughter!
And I was a wrestling fan as a kid, and so that certainly was a fun element to bring in. As far as vehicles and play sets, this is an incredible year. because we get the Cobra Terrordrome. Really one of the great play sets of all time. This thing was at the top of my Christmas list that year. Santa brought them to me. Finally giving Cobra a base. And it was also a base that's, you know, reproducible. There's thousands of these all over the world. They ever want to dominate an area, you drop a Terrordrome, build a Terrordrome in it, and now you've owned that place. Anybody tries to challenge your rule, you send the Cobra Firebat out and you strafe them. We also get the Havoc, one of the dumbest designed vehicles, but something that I thought was really fun at the time, as much as it is a vehicle that couldn't work in any real way and would be completely dangerous to take in any battle. It's cool. It's cool looking. Last 3 years, the 3 best years of G.I. Joe. Number 3, 1983. 1983 is certainly one of the greatest, and in all these last 3 years you're going to see icons introduced. The year 2 of the very newly created and super hit G.I. Joe toy line gets my number 3 slot. And of course, at the top of the reasons why I love this year is it created my favorite villain of all time. Not in G.I. Joe, of all time. I'll put him against Thanos. I'll put him against Vader. I don't give a shit what you people say. This guy is the one of the greatest villains of all time. That is Destro.
He's a terrifying enemy of G.I. Joe. Destro is his name. Destro is his name.
I remember seeing Destro and just being like, what the hell is that? I mean, got his like silver head, his beryllium steel fist, wrist rockets, and just open-chested disco style with his rocking his little medallion. He was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. He's audacious in his style. You know, he loves pretty things. He loves money. He's an honorable man. He's one of the most interesting characters in the line. We also get some of my favorite Joes here. We get Gung Ho, absolutely insane Marine. We get Snow Job, Torpedo. We get the Sky Striker and the Mail Order Major Blood figure. Another just iconic villain with his robot arm, writing bad poetry. A really fascinating villain. And we're starting to get this rogues gallery at this point of villains that became really fun to play with. And I think it really has the best lineup of villains of any medium, of any media, any story. There's just so many interesting villains in the G.I. Joe line. This is where that begins. We also get some of the great vehicles. This is the Hiss Tank year, but this is also the year we get the Dragonfly, the Polar Battle Bear, right? The Sky Striker, the Snake Armor. So a lot of the most iconic and unique and interesting vehicles came from this year. It's not an overloaded year like, 1986 was. But it is, or 1987, where it's just like they're producing the biggest, most ridiculous things you've ever seen. But the stuff they are producing is just some of their best IP, right? Some of the most unique things that say this is G.I. Joe. And this is where it jumps from. I think the first year, 82, it really felt like this one group of military themed with just a little bend of science fiction in it. And now it starts to go crazy town. Now it's getting weird. We got a guy with a silver face mask. We got a guy who wears his no shirt in the middle of the Arctic. If you read the comic, that's where we were introduced to Gung Ho. He's just like shirtless in the Arctic. Now it's getting weird, and that's what I'm here for. Next, in my opinion, the second best year of G.I. Joe ever, 1984. This is where we get, so many icons introduced in this line, and this is why it sits at the second to the best here. Roadblock is introduced in this year. The Baroness. She had been introduced in the comic book, but we finally got a figure of her. Spirit, Iron Knife, Storm Shadow. I remember seeing Storm Shadow. I don't think I even knew what a ninja was at the time. There wasn't much ninja content that at the time that Storm Shadow came out. I think it was one of the first time I was really conscious of ninjas. And man, that just opened up a world to you. He looked like the biggest badass. We also get Firefly, another story. I think Firefly is like the Boba Fett of the G.I. Joe story. He really doesn't have much going on story-wise. We don't see a lot about him. I think the later issues, Larry Hama started going crazy, making him this the Rashikage. I wasn't a fan of that. I like my Firefly where he's just mysterious, just a guy who goes and blows shit up. You never know he's there. That's what's interesting about him, is just he's a mysterious looking figure you don't know a lot about, and I don't want to know a lot about that guy. We also get Mutt and Junkyard, and we get our mail order hooded Cobra Commander, so we can have our commander in his battle helmet and in his hangout clothes. Interesting look. We also get some really incredible vehicles here. The height of this being the Whale, which, man, that was like one of the most exciting things. I remember getting that thing and just being like blown away by how much you could do with it. It was massive. At the time, it was the biggest thing I think they'd come out with. And it just was loaded with, you know, depth charges and a mini bike and a sled that shot out the front, and machine guns and cannons and rockets and spinning propellers. It was, you know, you're throwing people through those propellers. I did that like every time I played with it. And it floated, so you could take it into a pool or you could take it to the water, you know. So it was really one of their best vehicles of all time. It also came with a Cobra Rattler with Wild Weasel. And of course, the height of the entire year would be the introduction of Zartan into the line. One of the greats, one of the greatest villains of all time, one of the characters in the story that has one of the richest stories. I mean, Zartan is a badass, the badass of all badasses. If you look at Zartan's accomplishment list, Zartan killed the Hard Master. Zartan killed Serpentor with an arrow. Zartan killed the Blind Master. Zartan's got a real high kill list here, and a real complex and interesting storyline for that world. I remember just, you know, taking him out and getting him to change his color. It wasn't that easy, but it was, you could take him out and watch his skin change color and put the mask on. I love that mask. You always love the idea that he's just walking around, he puts a mask on, he's just wearing all Zartan's clothes still, but he's got a mask on, so he's a master of disguise. You know, he's just...
Zartan has a disguise.
Where's Zartan? I don't know any Zartan.
It's not exactly master disguise level disguise there. You should take your clothes off, maybe put on a business suit if you're going to wear that face. But really one of the great figures, and so exciting at the time when you just know anything about him. One of the most mysterious looking characters you ever saw. And this makes that year number 2. So that leaves for number 1... 1985. Now, 1985 gives us so many of the iconic characters in the line. That has to be the king of all G.I. Joe years. We get, in this one year, we got Alpine, Bazooka, the Dreadnoks, the Crimson Guard, Flint, who for a lot of people, especially if you're British, right, Flint was the team leader, and that's how I used him too. For me, Flint was, I've never been a Duke fan. I like Flint instead of Duke. Lady J, Shipwreck, the Crimson Twins, and also some of the best, you know, soldiers, troop builders, the Eels, the Snow Serpents. I mean, almost every character in this is an iconic character that is held up as one of the most significant characters in the line of what you think of when you think of G.I. Joe. Quick Kick comes out in this year. This is also peak G.I. Joe cartoon. This is when the cartoon got really, really good and really, really fun. You know, I think some of the best characterization were things like Quick Kick and Shipwreck. They brought so much character, in Alpine and Bazooka, who were like a comedy duo in the cartoon. So the lore was built in the cartoon and made that team much more fun. This is also like peak weird. We're getting really weird. We're getting pets. Everybody's getting real colorful. Not too colorful, but it's getting to be a colorful, weird looking group. But the height of the reason why this wins the number 1 slot as the greatest year of G.I. Joe ever has to be the USS Flag. This is the biggest playset that has ever been produced and ever will be. Because can you imagine if they tried to produce this thing today, how much it would cost? I think I remember being about $100, which is crazy to me. This thing is 7.5 feet long. It's the biggest play set that's ever been produced for any toy. I think it's gotta be. Who else would try to do something like crazy as this? I did get one, and you're gonna go, oh, I didn't, you know, you had to be a spoiled kid if you got that flag. No, I had divorced parents. Okay. So your parents stayed together, you didn't get a flag. My parents divorced, they competed for my attention, and I got the USS flag, okay? I'm broken, I have broken relationships and trust issues that I'll have for the rest of my life. But I got the flag. It's a good trade-off, so whatever. There's also a lot of great iconic vehicles in here. The Ferret, the Trouble Bubble. I mean, the Trouble Bubble comes from this year. We also got the Cobra Hydrofoil, which was one of my favorites. You needed something to attack the USS flag. Really great year with a ton of incredible vehicles. Some of the most iconic characters that the story has ever produced, and continue to be the most important characters in the G.I. Joe storyline. But capping that off, that the USS flag makes this the best year of G.I. Joe, in my opinion anyway. What's your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. What's your favorite year? What you think the worst year is? I'm probably guessing it's 1994, isn't it? Yeah. And like and subscribe if you don't mind have to say that shit.